I'm a late bloomer. Of course I've tried putting myself out there. I'm a late bloomer. Of course I've tried all the dating apps and I can tell you what I like and dislike about each one. I'm a late bloomer. Of course I crave being in a relationship, but God forbid someone pay me the slightest bit of attention, I will assume you're lying. I'm a late bloomer. Of course I crave physical touch, but I'm absolutely terrified by the prospect of literally anyone touching me ever at any time. Forever. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, hearing our friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances talk about any of their relationship milestones or their kids make us feel increasingly invisible the older we get. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I can think of nothing more mortifying than telling somebody about my lack of experience. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, people will tell me I'm lucky to be single. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, people will ask me, have I prayed about it? I am a late bloomer. Of course, it's harder to celebrate milestones because none of mine are relationship related. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I perfected the act of being a third wheel. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I've mapped out how to live my entire life alone. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, the longer that I'm single, the more convinced I am that I am completely grotesque and unlovable. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I am stressed as hell at figuring out kissing as an adult. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I know that there are lots of fish in the sea, but getting even one fish would be nice. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, it seems impossible that anyone would ever ask me out or show any interest in me ever because no one ever has. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, seeing how easily dating and relationships come to other people is so isolating because of how utterly impossible it seems for me. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, seeing any kind of media depicting the love lives of teenagers makes me cry because that's an experience I'll never get to have. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, it seems like an eternal mental struggle to keep trying, but also being too tired to keep trying. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I wonder how people figure out flirting so effortlessly. Like, how do you all know how to do this? I'm a late bloomer. Of course, the longer I go without being in a relationship, the more convinced I am that I'll never have one. I don't deserve one, and I don't see how I can ever rectify that fact. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I live in the eternal hope of romance. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, there is nothing wrong with me at all. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, I am deserving of every ounce of love and companionship if I so desire it. I'm a late bloomer. Of course, it feels like I'm the only one with this life experience, but just know that you're not. There's nothing wrong with you. There's more of us than you can possibly imagine. Dating is a skill that everyone has to learn. You're not alone in that, and we'll be okay.